Hello everyone, good morning and welcome back to Total Football Talks. We're going to look at all the latest news coming out of Manchester United, and there are some big ones coming in this morning. We will look at the headline being Bruno Fernandes and the link from Real Madrid. We'll also look at Manchester United entering the race for a Argentinian up-and-coming wonder kid. We'll have a look at who that may be and what qualities they could bring, and I'll give it a little bit of my take on that. We'll also look at what the academy head of Manchester Academy, Nick Cox, is saying and his relationship with Rúben Amorim. The 1958 are having a sit-in protest with Manchester City at the Manchester City game, so we'll look at a little bit of that. And there's a little bit on the Jim Ratcliffe, what he's saying about the Nice manager as well. And then finally, no, that's all our stories for now. Let's jump into the Bruno Fernandes story. But before we go any further, guys, thank you very much for joining me. I'm Keith, the host, and thank you for all the likes and subscribes so far. It's been absolutely amazing. If you could do the same today, I'd be so grateful. Bottom right-hand corner of the screen for the old subscribe. Get you into the comments, and please feel free to anything I talk about. Please feel free to comment on anything I talk about, and also if you could hit the like button, that would also massively help me. Okay, so let's look at the top headline, and that is Real Madrid are weighing up a £19 million move for Bruno Fernandes. Madrid have been present at virtually every Manchester United match recently, both home and away, to watch this player. I mean, guys, what do we think about this? Where are we with this? Bruno's our leader. He's our captain. He's one of our most influential players that we currently have playing in the squad at the moment. Now, I know there's a fan split between Bruno. Some want him, some can't have him. You know, Roy Keane's obviously had his take on it, which is standards. You know, he's talking about whether Bruno would replicate the standards of previous players in the past. And as a captain, Roy Keane obviously was an amazing captain, and Bruno was a very different type of captain. I think Bruno is probably our best captain at the minute, because we don't have too many. So, you know, where do you get? Would you like to see? Do you think £19 million in for Bruno? I mean, in terms of FFP and PSR, that would be a big help to the club, considering his contract. Considering he has just signed a new contract. I was going to say his contract's paid off, but he just signed a new contract last year, and he's on big wages. So you'd be getting a lot of money off the books. You'd be bringing in a lot of money. But can we do without Bruno Fernandes at the minute if Real Madrid did come in from? Plus, Real Madrid, it's not normally their type of deal. If you look at the players they've kind of got recently, younger players, Jude Bellingham, and Trent obviously on a free, and they're looking at other players to bring in at the kind of lower end of the market where there's free. They did it with the centre half, the Swiss centre half, or Alba. Again, brought him in on a free. They have a real strategy in terms of how they work the transfer market, and spending £90 million. It's been a little while since Madrid have gone in heavy. You know, Mbappe was another one who was brought in on a free. Yes, these guys are getting paid astronomical wages, totally understand that, but they're not paying massive fees for them. So to be paying 90 million for Bruno is a really interesting one. Do you think there's any truth in this? Do you think it's lies? Do you think it's just paper talk? Do you think it's just agent talk? Where are we with this? I'd love to get your thoughts in on that one. Okay, we'll move on to the next kind of big story, and this is doing the rounds at the minute, and Manchester United have entered the race to sign the winger Ian Subiabre, 18, from Argentina, and it's understood that this is highly influenced by Vivel and the scouting department. Now, that's the interesting bit about that, is that Vivel's in part of this whole scouting mission. He has, you know, seen many a young player. He's found many a young player, which we've talked about before, and brought them through. And could this be the next kid that Vivel could be interested in bringing through to Manchester United? Watched a little bit of him this morning, just highlights, so I can't really say too much. He plays predominantly on the left. He has a bit of pace, he has a bit of trickery, and he likes to whip in across. I mean, yeah, is he any better than any of the kids that we currently have in the setup? It's hard to say at the minute. I think if he is one that Vivel has an eye on, as I said, Vivel has a very good track record in players that he's brought through in the past. So this could be a good move. But again, we just can't keep buying young players and hoping that they're going to save our future. But this could be a good move, especially if Vivel's kind of got his fingerprints all over it. I do like the sound of this one. The kid does look like he is good. So let's see where this transfer goes over the next few weeks and months running into the summer to see if we do bring him in. Now, the next one is Manchester United have set their sights on sporting midfielder Morten Hjulmand. He has an 80 million release clause, and they can drive the price down to between 50 and 60 million in negotiations. The player would be open to a move to Manchester United. Now, we seem to be getting linked with a lot of players from Sporting. Trincao was one I spoke about yesterday. Hjulmand is another one that's now being talked about. When I've kind of read up a little bit on Hjulmand, Manchester United were interested in him before he actually signed for Sporting, and he is a very, very good midfielder. I remember him scoring an excellent goal against England in the Euros. Very, very good player. If he was to come in for that kind of money, I would take it, but again, I just can't see us spending 50 to 60 million. I'm wondering whether they're looking into our youth setup and Seka Kone being someone who might actually be the guy who comes through, so we don't have to spend this sort of money on Hjulmand. But Hjulmand done a great job, and he developed a hell of a lot under Rúben Amorim. He does know Rúben Amorim's system, same as Trincao, and he would be a very good player to bring in our midfield. He is a kind of that combativeness that Manchester United need. So let's see if there is anything in Hjulmand moving forward. And just talking about this is what Nick Cox had to say about Rúben Amorim and their relationship, and it seems that it's pretty good. He's an approachable and charming guy. As you know, he's supportive. He's a supportive character around the training room, and the lines of communication are broad. It's not just to the coach. It's Sir Jason Wilcox, Darren Fletcher, other members of the senior leadership team, and Rúben's staff. So it's an organic working process. There's got to be a healthy collaboration of debate. When it comes to sending players across, there's a back and forth between Rúben and his staff, and Darren Fletcher is the leading voice. So it seems to be a hefty and really good relationship between Manchester United's youth department and the senior department, and that is something that is going to be key for Rúben Amorim moving forward, trying to get the players that he needs from the youth setup in to cover some of the players that are potentially going to go in the summer. So having this very good relationship is excellent. It's excellent news that Nick Cox, who's done a fantastic job in Manchester United's youth setup, has a really good working relationship with Rúben Amorim. I think this can only help benefit us moving forward for all the young players that are currently in the under 18s and under 21s that could make that jump and that transition from youth football to senior football. So very, very pleased that that's coming out and being reported by Stephen Rawlson, who has a very good understanding of the youth side of Manchester United, writes for the MEN. He has some really, really good stories, and he's really, really across this. He goes to a lot of games, the younger age group games, and he knows he's got a very good grounding in how they're all working at the minute. So that is really good news to hear. Now, there was another story about there's a sit-in protest that the 1958 are going to be holding in this after the Manchester City derby, because obviously, despite the fact that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has come out and done his interviews, he is still got a target on his back because of all the mismanagement and the way their clubs being run. And even at some of the players that we're looking at, there's a lot of talent, there's a lot of young talent, but these talents and these kids are going to fluctuate. They're going to have good elements and bad elements to their games. They're going to play well, they're going to not play well, because that is what essentially happens with younger players. They have good games and bad games. It's going to happen. We can't just have a raft of kids. We have some experienced players in there, and the likes of Delit, Mazraoui. I'm trying to think of who else is Bruno, obviously, but I mean, Bruno could be on the move. So yeah, we just need to be careful on bringing in too many young players. And I believe the protests are going to, and it's about on the pitch, it's about off the pitch, it's about what the Glazers have done to this club. They've destroyed it, they've laden it with debt, and I think that's been overlooked by Sir Jim Ratcliffe in some of his previous interviews, even though I think he can't really talk about it much because he is in bed with them. So, that's where we are with that one. But yeah, and then the final story of the day it was a little bit on the Nice manager, and it's the Nice manager, Franck Haise. The article that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's comments, not enjoying Nice games, approached was a lot more complete than that. But Sir Jim hasn't apologies. I can't read this morning. He hasn't seen a Nice match this season, which is really interesting because obviously his focus on Manchester United. Um, he goes on to say he's speaking a bit more about what he saw another time with the people who are here at the club. We are here to make the club progress in order to sort of do even better. It's not that serious. We can be annoyed that it's obvious, but it's really worth staying annoyed at him for a long time. We have to keep working, enjoying ourselves, and we've got to put it back into the best. We've got to get ourselves back into the best possible place, and we have to move on. We have to continue on our pathway. So obviously, Sir Jim has they are obviously not entirely happy about what's actually happening, about what he said about Nice. And Sir Jim has a way of being very forthright, and sometimes maybe he speaks freely, and whether that means he's speaking very well, I don't know. I apologize, I didn't read that out very well, so who am I to talk? But yeah, he said he hasn't seen Nice play much recently. His attention has been with Manchester United, which is good for Manchester United in the respect that he's trying to move the club forward. He's made a lot of mistakes. He has admitted to that, and I still don't know if he's the right person to help us kind of get to where we need to go. But he's obviously neglected Nice, and Nice are just having that little pop back saying he hasn't seen them in a while, and that he probably should do because he owns both clubs and they're both his responsibility. So, guys, that's where we are with all the news. Apologies about that last one. My dyslexia kicked in heavily there, and I kind of blew it a bit. So apologies, but thank you very much for listening to me this morning, and I will be here tomorrow with whatever news breaks, and let's see where the Bruno story goes. 90 million to Real Madrid. Get your comments in below. If you've stayed to this part of the podcast, absolutely magic. You're legends. Thank you so much for everyone tuning in, and I shall see you tomorrow.